Mr. Pfluger, you talked about the threat of future attacks, and you said that you're worried about the attacks, that SCN has predicted that there will be a rise. What about those? So we saw in the case of Boulder that this was a visa overstay issue. Are you worried about those that entered this country illegally that had a tie to terrorism? Could they also pose a threat?
Well, certainly if there's individuals in this country that have a tie to terrorist organizations, they should be a priority in monitoring ties to terrorist organizations without a doubt. Yes, sir.
And do they pose a threat to the Jewish community?
If there's an individual in this country that has a tie to a terrorist organization, we should consider them a threat to the Jewish community.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Carafano, when I think about the lawlessness that is happening across our country in many cities, talk to me about are these protesters in some cases being paid to go from city to city to protest, whether it is from the river to the sea mindset or an anti-ICE mindset? Are there common threads that we see in these protests?
We do see organizations that have, in the public record, supported activities, including the BLM riots, the anti-Semitic riots that we've seen at universities and other places, and people in California. This is undeniable. Now, the question, as I said in my testimony, the key thing is material support. It's a real crime. It is a red line. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of having conducted material support, but the answer is, where do you look for material support? You look for people who are involved in activities that result in harm to the public, whether it's a terrorist act or a public violence.
So when you see communities that fail to take these protests seriously, when they do cross the line of protected speech to an area where it's not protected, violence, threats of violence, and those types of things, is there an incentive in these communities to continue to foment this type of attitude? And is that leading to the growing danger and the growing threat across our country?
I think it's a general threat estimate. We could say that a lot of the organized public violence that we've seen in the last half decade is what we would call top-down. Right? It's not like the civil rights movement. It's not like people saying, let's block the bridge in Montgomery, Alabama. It's people being organized and sent to the streets. And we're seeing the same people or the same groups organizing across a range of different issues. So if you say, is there an external threat of a button to push to say, when do we want to create public discord in the United States and make that happen? We've seen a series of occasions now where there appears the answer to that is yes. And then, as I said, the real question is, because we're worried about public safety, if that crosses over into material support, now you just don't have somebody that's fomenting public unrest for political motives, for international motives, but you might have people that are actually creating a physical threat to American citizens.
Ms. Raymond, you talked about having both sides of the ideological spectrum covered. That doesn't matter that you see it on both sides, but characterize those that are committing these, that are inciting these violent protests right now. What side of the political spectrum are they on? The ones that are screaming from the river to the sea and free Palestine in a way that incites violence and protest?
Certainly what's been, I think, most jarring for many in the Jewish community over the past few weeks has been the shift from what we had seen as sort of peaceful but uncomfortable protest to violent protest. There's no question about that.
Which side of the political spectrum do they lie on?
They're coming from the far left. And according to our survey, I didn't give this statistic before, we ask American Jews, where are you most concerned about the threats? And 33% say the far left, 33% say the far right, 33% say Christian nationalism, and 33% say extremism in the name of Islam.
What I want to hone in on right now, though, is these protests have been going on for quite some time, for several years, in fact, and they've become more violent in nature. So do you see that same character in that 33% that you just identified on the far right in the terms of massive amounts of people in massive protests that go from peaceful to violent?
The really tragic part of what we are seeing in anti-Semitism in America today is that we cannot look in only one direction. Right now, it would be very easy to turn all of our attention to the far left, to the anti-Zionist protesters, and say, this is where the threat is coming from now, and ignore every other source of
Unacceptable
anti-Semitism.
in
We
any-
cannot
any
do that.
form
We
on
don't
any
have that
side.
luxury.
I agree. Thank you. My time has expired. I yield to the ranking member.